just like that. Throwing it back, she throwing it back, just like that, just like that. She throwing it back, she throwing it back, just like that, just like that. She throwing it.
Chelsea, baby, send me a beat. I always knew I can do this. Hold on, be quiet, don't say shit. I always knew I can do this. Hold on, be quiet, don't say shit. I always knew that I can do this. Hold on, wait, be quiet, don't say shit.
Welcome back, LilScorpioKing supporters. I'm going to be doing a reaction to YNW, Melly, Judge, BLASTS, Prosecutors request and sets new trial date. I heard YNW, Melly, he been, getting on his lawyer because he ready to come out. That man been in there for like, what, 5 years now? I remember like ever since that song he made with Kanye, it's like, he been gone since then. Now, whether he's innocent or guilty, I have no idea, but at the same time, they need to go ahead and prove their case if they can, or if they can't. I don't feel like they should still keep him in there, though. You feel me? Like, he's been in there forever without a verdict. Y'all retrialed it. You feel me? So it's like they keep going until, you know what I'm saying? They get a guilty verdict. So it's like still reasonable doubt there.
Ask the court to inquire from the state if this is truly an ongoing investigation. When is it going to come to a head? Today, tomorrow, or in the middle of this trial?
YNW Melly. Remember him? He's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, accused of killing his 2 childhood friends. Now, he's already been in jail since 2019. And yes, he's already been...
Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying he's guilty or innocent. I personally don't care because whatever. But I will say this. I don't put nothing past no one. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, that's believable. You feel me? Not saying him in particular with this case, but I'm just saying in general, it's like, like I don't put nothing past nothing, like at all. So I don't think that's not possible, because that's possible. People part ways all the time and feel different ways about each other all the time. You feel me? So you just never know. But could be innocent too. You feel me? Because it is wishy, a little bit. So you just never know, man.
On trial once, but we know how that ended.
You don't have to keep a juror in food form. It's indicates they have further discussions, reviewing the evidence, and speaking freely amongst the jury. You're still unable to reach a unanimous decision. So at this time, what I'm going to do is just declare the trial prescribed.
Now, that mistrial was declared back in 2023. Since then, there's been a slight change at the defense table, and there's been a prosecution shakeup too. And in a surprising move, the state wanted some more time before retrying the case. But does the new judge overseeing the case agree? Thanks for joining us on Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Milner. Now, it's been a while since I talked about YNW Melly, mainly because I was covering another high-profile case right here in New York. But over in South Florida, Melly remains where he's been, in lockup. Now, depending on the outcome of his retrial, he's facing anywhere between life in prison or the death penalty if he's convicted. Now, when does his retrial begin, you might be wondering? Well, in about 2 months, despite a push for a delay.
February of 2019, Mr. Demons voluntarily surrendered and was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, wherein the state indicated they were seeking the death penalty if, in fact, he was found guilty. In October of 23, Mr. Demons was rearrested for tampering with a witness, directing the activities of a criminal gang, solicitation to commit tampering, and conspiracy to commit tampering.
So that was a little snippet of the charges Melly faces, but I'm sure those following the case already knew that, and likely already know the allegations in the case too. Melly, his friend Cortland Henry, and their friends Christopher Thomas Jr. and Anthony Williams were all at the studio together, and all hopped into the car together after the late-night recording session. Christopher and Anthony never made it home that night, back in October of 2018. They were killed in a drive-by shooting. The prosecutors allege it wasn't random. It was someone from inside the car that made the fatal shots and staged it to look like a drive-by shooting. Prosecutors allege Melly pulled the trigger, and Cortland helped cover it up. And while I talk about how Melly's been in jail for more than 6 years, it's been nearly 7 years since Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr.'s families' lives were changed forever, with no closure on the case so far. So Melly's mistrial happened in late summer of 2023. Now we're approaching late summer of 2025, and Melly's trial is going back to square one. Well, kind of. His retrial is now moving forward in September of this year, despite objections from the state who wanted a delay in the trial.
I have the state's motion to reconsider or order moving forward with the trial on September the 10th. The trial date remains set on September the 10th. I did that last July 8th, 2024, although there's no motion to continue filed. I did read the motion. I guess I'll treat this as a motion to continue. I did read the authority cited therein. I did read again, Florida Statute 924-071. Additional grounds for appeal by state, time for taking in the state of cause.
I likewise again review the omnibus order on defendant's motion to suppress 1 through 13, which was entered by Judge Murphy on December the 20th, 2023. I also reviewed the order from Judge Murphy denying the defendant's motion to set aside stay and order granting defendant's motion to modify the stay without discovery proceed. That's entered May 2nd, 2024. I likewise reviewed a Supreme Court case called Mitchell versus State, 911, May 2nd, 1211. It's a Supreme Court case of September of 2005 regarding serious constitutional issues that are implicated if the state were to be automatically entitled to stay the effect of a decision adverse to the state in a criminal proceeding. So, understanding that I've already looked at all of that, State, anything else that you would want to tell me in support of your motion?
No, Judge, my motion basically covers the previous court's orders, the statute, the case law in terms of how this case is stayed.
Okay. Defense, do you all want the case to be stayed? The state says it's stayed, so should you agree to their motion?
Can we have 1 moment?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Against our advice, our client must proceed.
So you object to their request for me to determine if it's automatic stay?
Based upon what our client has instructed us, yes, sir.
Okay, so let me make the record crystal clear on this one as well. I am aware that 924-071 calls for an automatic stay.
That nigga Melly was snapped.
The state is appealing some orders they want to appeal. In this particular case, Mr. Dennis having to instruction not to appeal. So, state, he has to do whatever that is. Judge Murphy entered this motion to suppress, which is the subject of the appeal. Right now. He entered this order on December 20th, 2023, that was 568 days ago. And in that order, he says at the end, the court has not been moved to consider the suppression of specific evidence. It is up to the parties to inform the court as to what specific evidence falls within the suppression order and what specific evidence is admissible pursuant to that order. Then we were here on the defense review motion for bond on May 6th. That was 65 days ago. I asked you all, have you gotten together and figured out what specific evidence falls within the suppression order? I'm going to guess that hasn't happened.
No, Judge, I made the proffer to the court last time as to what that evidence would be.
It was basically penalty based, for lack of a better term.
No, they were aggravators. They go to membership in a gang. There are things that the jury would have to find before going into penalty.
Not aggravators, that's the definitely
Sorry.
aggravators, that's the gang enhancement itself, Your Honor. That's charged. He was charged in committing the murder for the furtherance of the gang, which is an aggravator in terms of the
Something that they would have to find by way of an interrogatory.
Yes.
Yes.
No, objection, that's not true.
That's not correct.
So you all don't agree on.
No, we don't.
No, what you just said, you do not agree on. There is, I'm sorry.
Have you all done what Judge Murphy ordered you to do in 2023? It is up to the parties to inform the court as to what specific evidence falls within the suppression order and what specific evidence is admissible pursuant to the court.
May I answer the question this way? At that time, the state appealed it all, which stayed everything. And so at this point, the law on whether or not Judge Murphy was right or not is all up at the fourth, and it stayed. We can't determine that in a stayed case. It stayed.
You can't talk to the state and decide what this applies to.
I just argued what I have to argue, Judge. You're saying it stayed for only one purpose, but not. The answer is we are stayed and unable to do so.
So you don't even know what evidence the order is.
No, I believe we do, and I think that's on appeal at the fourth. But during a stayed case, we cannot do those things. And that's why it hasn't been done. Not because we haven't wanted to. They appealed it. It stayed.
Unfortunately, to also remind the court, the defense did cross appeal, so even stuff that would remain in is also potentially can now be excluded should the fourth rule in the defendant's favor.
And that's still pending before the fourth.
But you don't agree with their request. You want to go forward. That's what you just told me. Your client wants to go forward.
That's what he said.
So according to the Sun-Sentinel, the original judge on this case, Judge John Murphy, ruled prosecutors wouldn't be able to reuse some of the technological evidence the state presented to help establish Melly's alleged motives, gang affiliation, and consciousness of guilt. The appeals court has yet to rule on if those restrictions will still stand, and are supposed to hear arguments about it on September 16th, a week after Melly's retrial is supposed to begin. But as you just heard from the judge, the case is still set to move forward on September 10th, and the issues in front of the appeals court aren't enough to delay the trial. But the state isn't the only one suffering some issues too. The defense is too. They accuse the Broward State Attorney's Office of prosecutorial misconduct, and Melly faces another charge of witness tampering. Oh, and one of his lawyers is under investigation. But as of this recording, she doesn't face any charges.
I don't know how we can properly.
Yeah, because I heard they got a they do an investigation on his woman lawyer, because you know he got multiple lawyers, saying like something dealing with witness tampering, something like that. So,
Mr. Dennis, on the evidence of tampering with the witness, solicitation, conspiracy to tamper, when we don't know all the facts. So I would ask the court to inquire from the state, if this is truly an ongoing investigation, when is it going to come to a head? Today, tomorrow, or in the middle of this trial? And how come you have not pursued, when you file a memorandum of law, saying that this liberty must, regardless of what Mr. Dennis wants, regardless of what the defense team wants, must get off this case? I don't know how they can do this.
So Melly's trial is moving forward in September, nearly 7 years after Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr. were murdered. How will his retrial differ from his first trial? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. But let's break it down with criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson Ferrer. Safa, first of all, great to see you. Like, I haven't seen you in a while in this format, I should say. But
Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, oh, thank you. But I'm curious, like, on your thoughts on this case, as opposed to what we were normally talking about, which was Diddy. But in this case with YNW Melly, are you surprised that the judge said, let's move forward with the case, even though the state was waiting for whatever the appeal court was going to say about restrictions, like technological evidence, gang affiliation, all of that stuff? But are you surprised the case is moving forward in September?
I'm not surprised at all. Mr. Dimmons has been waiting in custody to see a trial on this case since, I believe, 2019. You know, he obviously went to trial before that ended in a mistrial, and he's remained in custody since then. And he has a right to a speedy trial, a constitutional right to a speedy trial. And I think in this particular case,
yeah, I mean, he's been in there since 2019. Like, whether he's innocent or guilty, that doesn't mean you just lock somebody up without at least give him a verdict. Shoot, if you want him guilty so bad, not saying, you know, they should, but I'm saying, shoot, just say he's guilty then. Like, you feel me? Like what's the holdup?
the judge is trying to ensure that. So it's not surprising here that the judge is saying, no, we're going to trial on this particular date and everybody needs to be prepared to move forward.
And I thought it was interesting, too, because just watching back the hearing, it was actually Jamel Dimmons, aka YNW Melly's decision to move forward with this against the advice of his attorneys, his defense attorneys. What do you make of him kind of pushing himself to kind of get this trial going just to see what's going to end up happening?
Yeah, you know, I think at the end of the day, he's been sitting there for quite some time and he just wants to move forward with his life, whether that is an acquittal so that he can get back to the public and get back to his work, or accept his fate as a convicted felon, someone that has been convicted of 2 counts of murder. So a lot of times with clients, and particularly defendants, they don't like to sit in limbo. And considering, again, he's been in custody since 2019, so we're talking years. We're not just talking a year. And we saw how quick Mr. Combs' trial went to trial, or Mr. Combs' case went to trial. Mr. Melly, or YNW Melly, has that same exact right. And so it's not surprising to me that he wants to just get it over with, you know, and he probably expects or thinks that he's going to have something favorable to him as he commences on this trial, considering that the other trial landed in a mistrial, which essentially for that moment was a win for the defense.
And I think he was even hoping that there would be a possibility he could be out on bond or bail. And then obviously that didn't happen. He's remained in custody since. So I can understand why he wants this to move forward, just to see what's going to end up happening. And given that this is a retrial, who do you think has kind of a tough...
They like... we gonna figure this out one way or another. We're gonna get them guilty one way or another.
For hurdle to overcome? Is it the prosecution? Is it the defense? Especially knowing that the offense that had happened, that being the double murders of YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser, Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr., happened back in 2018. Who do you think has the tougher hurdle for this retrial?
I think that the tougher hurdle is always going to remain with the prosecution, because it's their obligation to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to prove each and every element of each and every homicide offense beyond a reasonable doubt that he intentionally murdered these individuals. And that's always a hurdle. That's always a burden that the prosecution has to get over. At the same time, there are things that the defense is really going to have to work on here. This case landed in a mistrial previously, so the likelihood is that, again, if they came back hung, that some believed that he was guilty and some believed that he was not guilty. And so the defense is going to really have to hit away at the prosecution's arguments and theories that Mr. YNW Melly committed this murder. And so I think that both of them have a job to do, and it's going to be a pretty tough job on both sides. I think the prosecution's hurdle is a little bit higher than the defense.
Yeah, because again, they have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And is there a possible doubt that may linger? It'll be, I guess, up to a jury to decide eventually when that happens. But there are a lot of high stakes in this case, too. Not only is this first-degree murder and 2 counts of first-degree murder at that, but it also could be a death penalty case if Melly is convicted. What do you make of just the high stakes, especially that he is facing the death penalty?
Very, very, very high stakes in this case, and he's got everything to lose. He's got his life to lose. So this isn't just a case here where he's going to be spending the rest of his life in prison. This is a case where he could be set to death because of this conviction or because of these convictions. So with respect to the defense team, they're really going to have to do a...
Yeah, and if he's really guilty, I want them to really prove that he's guilty, because since he's facing a death penalty, bro, it's like, I've seen where innocent people, they'll get the death penalty. You know, it wasn't as probably a situation as like this, but I heard about them where they'll falsely get convicted. They'll falsely get convicted. So just imagine him not actually being guilty and they serve him that. Not saying they should or not saying they would, but it's a possibility. You just never know. So hopefully the defense team, if they want the jury to say that he's guilty, put up some real information. And if he's innocent, his lawyers need to be working they A off as well. Now, they already got a mistrial, so it was already working in Melly's favor. You feel me? So We just gonna have to see, bro.
Very fine tooth comb job with cross-examination, making sure they cross their T's and dot their I's, and essentially save his life on the back end. If he is convicted, then they will enter the penalty phase, and his attorneys will argue, for him to remain in prison for life. The prosecution more than likely will ask for the death penalty based on the deaths, and the judge, or in Florida, I'm not sure if it's the judge or the jury that makes that determination, but ultimately the stakes are significantly high because he does face the death penalty.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I remember when this case first happened back in 2023, or I should say the first trial happened in 2023, and I was always curious, especially about the death penalty aspect, given that a law came down. It doesn't have to be unanimous, it just has to be kind of a majority thing. And in terms of that, what do you make of that? The jurors don't have to be unanimous on deciding the death penalty. It really just has to be kind of a majority, either go for it or they go against it. But what do you make of just that added layer to it?
Yeah, that's a pretty difficult layer. And, I'm of the opinion, of course, as a defense attorney, that, they have to have a unanimous guilty verdict. I think that they should make a unanimous decision on whether or not to put that individual to death, or for that to be that decision to be in the hands of the judge, who may be more equipped to handle or to make a decision like that, as opposed to lay people from the public who may not fully understand the law, may not understand certain things with respect to the death penalty.
I mean, in reality, whether he's guilty or innocent, the jury or the judge can't really determine to give him the death penalty or not. But I'm on some other stuff though. I'm thinking about some other stuff. I'm not gonna bring that into it just based off my beliefs. You feel me? As far as something like that, not saying you as a person don't do it to him yourself. I'm just saying, far as being judged and saying where it should go. You feel me? Because it don't matter. In reality, it don't matter what nobody do. You can't determine if they should stay alive, if they should die, or whatever the case may be. Now, of course, somebody do something to you. I'm not telling you not to do anything to them, or whatever the case may be, or I would. And I'm just saying, if we got a judge on a panel, it's different. You feel me? Or just some.
I'm of the opinion that they should all unanimously make that decision. The fact that it is, based on a majority, of course, that's what Florida determined to be, their standard. And so, unfortunately, if he's convicted, then they will have to deal with that.
Yeah, and obviously we're months away from, that possibility, because it could go in the completely opposite direction. We just never know with cases like this, because I even remember back during the first trial, it was like Melly, was kind of adamant that he was inside the car. He even made that kind of video at the end. It said Melly and his friends were victims of being a drive-by. Then he kind of did an about face. His friend came on the stand and was just kind of like, oh no, Melly was actually here. He wasn't in the car when this happened. None of that. But do you think that we could get these kind of like bombshell shocker moments in the retrial, or do you think it'll be more or less possibly the same as the first trial?
I think it's going to be pretty similar to the first trial, and I know that there were some bombshells that were dropped in that first trial, and the defense particularly is not going to want to shy too far away from whatever the testimony was, or whatever the testimony that was provided to them in favor of them during that first trial. So, whoever's going to testify on behalf of the defense, if they testified during the first trial, they don't want to get back on the stand during this trial and say something totally different and totally opposite. It's going to destroy the credibility of the defense's theory in their case, so they got to be really careful with that. And same for the prosecution, depending on who they call as a witness. There was clearly some sort of doubt that was laid out during that first trial, and I think that the defense should continue to pick away at that and go at that, because the prosecution didn't have a clear-cut case then. They don't have a clear-cut case now, which is why this case is going to trial again.
And also, really quick, Safa, I just want to clear up something I mentioned earlier, just about it being a majority rule. It really just has to be 8 people, an 8-juror majority in order for the death penalty. So still a majority, but it has to be at least 8 people, which still is pretty scary to think about if you're a defendant in a case like this. But also, with us being kind of months away from this trial, or really 2 months at this point, how important do you think jury selection will be in a case like this? Obviously, from other high-profile cases that we've covered, it's very important, this voir dire process. But in a case like this, where the stakes are high, including even death penalty as a possibility, how important do you think jury selection will be?
The case is won or lost during jury selection, and we say that all the time in the legal profession. In this particular case here, the defense is going to want jurors specifically that are quite religious. And so, as we're preparing for voir dire and jury selection, we're thinking about the ideal juror that we would want. Even as a former prosecutor, the prosecution's ideal jurors, the defense's ideal jurors. In this particular case, with respect to people who are heavily involved in religion, oftentimes they come off as great jurors for the defense because they don't like to hold other people in judgment. They believe that that is the responsibility of God or a higher being. And so, not wanting to hold someone in judgment, they don't like to usually find individuals guilty. Not only that, but if you're talking about the death penalty, they don't want to take a life. They don't think that that is their responsibility or their decision to make.
Yeah, that's pretty much, like, since you said it, that's pretty much what I was getting to in that type of religion, like in that type of belief, like, because I believe that too. Now, again, that does not mean if you do something to somebody I love, I won't knock you down. Pause. That does not mean that. I'm just saying, if we're sitting in a jury and we're judging as far as some death penalty stuff, I wouldn't go for that just because, whether that person is guilty or not. That's not my place. You feel me? Like it's on some other stuff. It's like it's deeper than whatever. You feel me? So that's a conversation for another day.
Also, you want people, from the defense aspect who can relate to YNW Melly, who may be fans, who may, believe in him, believe in his case, young black men, young black individuals that may relate to him to some extent. And from the prosecution, you're going to want individuals who, are very law and order, very law enforcement, very geared towards, believing the police, believing in law enforcement. A lot of people who love true crimes, they're oftentimes, more favorable jurors to the prosecution as well. So each side has their different pickings of who they're going to want. They're going to try to knock off each and every person that the other side wants until they get that happy medium jury.
Alrighty. That's all for today. Make sure y'all type the links in my description. I'm out.
Throwing it back, just like that, just like that. Throwing it back, throwing it back, just like that, just like that. She throwing it back, just like that, just like that. She throwing it.
Chelsea, baby, send me a beat. I always knew I can do this. Hold on, be quiet, don't say shit. I always knew I can do this. Hold on, be quiet, don't say shit. I always knew that I can do this. Hold on, wait, be quiet, don't say shit.